Uh,
Okay, we're at 7 o'clock, and I see people are still signing on, joining us. Um, so those of you that are on now will have the benefit of my my little heads up. Uh, some of you know me, and those of you that know me might notice that I look a little funny. It looks like I have Halloween makeup on. And what that is about is I had eye surgery, eyelid surgery, a few weeks ago. And I really thought I'd be healed up by now. When I told Howie I'd be happy to fill in for him tonight, but I'm not quite healed up yet. I'm doing fine. I'm moving in the right direction, but I need to put eye drops in periodically, like sometimes every 10 or 15 minutes. So you're going to be seeing me do that tonight. I won't subject you to watching me put eye drops in. I'll turn off my video for just a few seconds. Um, and that's what I'm doing, so you don't have to worry about me. But the invitation for you is to use those little moments of stillness, little moments of not hearing somebody talking or looking at a screen to check in with your own body, because that's what I'll be doing. I'm going to be checking in with taking care of my body. And it's an opportunity for you to do the same, to just check in what's going on with my body right now. That's something that actually some teachers do in Dharma talks. And I forget to do it because I start talking and I just forget to stop and check in with my body. But it's a really useful thing for us all to do. So you'll be doing that anyway, presumably, during the meditation, but during the talk as well. If you see my screen go blank or a picture that's not me, it's kind of a signal to take a moment and check in. Look inward, turn inward for a moment. So that said, we have more people checked in now. I'm David Lewis. I'm your teacher for the evening. I'm a student of Howie's and a longtime friend and sometime member of Mission Dharma. I used to be on the board of Mission Dharma. So it's always a great pleasure to be back with Mission Dharma, and particularly tonight. So I don't want to do too much talking, and because we're in meditation time right now. So I invite you to get comfortable. First and foremost, find a comfortable meditation position. And as you may know, the Buddha said that there are 4 different official meditation postures: sitting, standing, lying down, and walking. So most of us sit on a cushion or a chair, but some people like to meditate lying down or need to. And if your energy is low and you might be having trouble staying awake this evening, standing is a great way to remain alert. So whatever posture works for you, as long as you can relax and remain alert at the same time. Sometimes that's a fine distinction. Relaxing while we remain alert. So find that position and do any wiggling around that you might need to do to get comfortable and put everything in its place. And if you're comfortable closing your eyes, allow your eyes to gently close, turning the gaze inward. And I'll just add that if you're not comfortable closing your eyes, if you'd like to meditate with your eyes open, feel free, but I would encourage you not to be looking at a screen while you're doing that. Find an inert spot on the wall or the floor that will not invite distraction. It's very hard sometimes to meditate with our eyes open because of all of our sense doors, none of them trigger the mind like the eyes, like seeing. Seeing almost automatically triggers the thinking mind. What is it that I'm seeing? So if you're able, letting your eyes gently close and noticing how when you close your eyes, the other sense doors open up. You may become more aware of hearing, of sounds, of smelling, perhaps even tasting. More aware of the sense of touch, feeling the touch points of your body in your seat, wherever your hands are resting, your feet. Even with our eyes closed, we know we're in a body because of our sense of touch at the sense door of the body. And relax, noticing any areas of tension in the mind or the body. And if you're able, with perhaps an out breath, let that relax. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw relax, your forehead. And if you notice some area of discomfort or pain even, that doesn't just relax itself away, just allow that to be. Discomfort is like this. We can abide with it without necessarily being reactive. And as the body settles into its seat, allow the mind to settle into the body, bringing body and mind together in the present moment. And perhaps tuning into the breath. The breath is, of course, an aspect of being in the body, part of being bodily present. It is a wonderful meditation object because while the breath is always changing, always moving, can't be held on to, it's a reliable refuge in meditation. If the mind starts to wander or weave a story, with mindfulness, at some point you'll notice that that's happened. And that's an opportunity to bring your attention back to the breath or to the body and ground yourself once again in the present moment, because the breath and the body are always in the present moment. The mind might wander off, but the body is right here. As Ajahn Amaro likes to instruct, rest in the peace and ease that is the natural peace and ease of body and mind. Rest in the peace and ease that is the natural peace and ease of body and mind. and relax. So continue meditating like this. I may pop in once or twice, the reminders, but otherwise I'll ring a bell at the end. If the mind has wandered, it's not a problem. Simply notice that that's happened. Bring your attention gently back to the breath, to the body. Ground yourself once again in the here and now. Start all over again. Thank you for your practice. And we have a few moments for announcements, if there are any, Mary.
Thank you, David. Well, I just wanted to remind folks that we are having an in-person half-day retreat on Saturday, October 21st. Again, we will be at Fort Mason, and it's called The Wings of Awakening. And so if you are local to the San Francisco Bay Area and you haven't had an opportunity to join us yet on one of these in-person retreats, they're very sweet, and you really just love sitting together, feeling that field. So I will have oops, let's put that right in there. There is the link for the Eventbrite. And then just finally, this whole Mission Dharma rises. It's a field of generosity. The teachers come and they offer their teachings of their own accord, their own offering, and then as folks, as part of the Sangha, we offer dana as a way of showing our gratitude and appreciation and part of our practice. So there are ways to do that: Venmo, PayPal, other means. So thank you in advance for your kindness and generosity. And back to you, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mary. Mary and I are old friends. So, a while back, about a month ago, before I had this medical procedure that I mentioned, I knew I was going to be laid up for a while, for about a month. So I visited some family out of state that I was overdue visiting. And that was nice. It was an easy trip. But after being around people 24/7 and standing in lines at airports, I was happy to come home and walk in my front door. It felt like a refuge. I set down my bag, I took a shower to wash off the road. I plopped down in a chair and I just sat for a while, which is what we meditators do. Letting go of all the small stresses of travel. I was home. I was grateful that my mindfulness practice allowed me to take in that felt experience of coming home. As I relaxed body and mind, I appreciated what a refuge home is. When I'm out and about, whether traveling or just running errands around town, I'm subconsciously on higher alert, watching for the unexpected. When I come home, I'm in familiar territory, and I don't need to be so alert to the world around me. I pretty much know what to expect. When the refrigerator motor flips on, I don't jump. It's a familiar sound. Try paying attention the next time you come home and notice the effect it has, if any, on the body and the mind. For many of us, this is a feeling of refuge. It's a safe place where we can relax and let go. Now, I know this is not the case for everyone. Sometimes where we live is a place of stress and could cause tension rather than relaxation. But home, as a place of refuge, can be anywhere. If you're traveling and staying in a hotel somewhere, returning to your room after a busy day out and about feels like a refuge. I can only imagine that when an unhoused person returns to their tent, it must feel like a refuge. What's important is not the location of home, but the ability to actually experience a sense of refuge, of peace. The Buddha emphasized the importance of refuge and pointed out that it's more a state of mind than a physical place. The real refuge is the peace and serenity of mind that he taught us to cultivate. which is available to us wherever we are, if we know how to tap into it. Indeed, the Buddha encourages monastic followers to leave home and become itinerant wanderers, like he was, in order to reinforce this lesson. But at home, as I said, everything is in its familiar place and there are not too many surprises. And out in the world, our reptilian brain kicks in and we're on high alert for hazards. A friend of mine likes to joke about almost anything that anybody says. She replies, danger lurking everywhere. Cognitive scientists and meditation teachers point out that this anxiety can become a habit of mind if we're not careful. One goal of our meditation practice is to provide easy access to a sense of refuge, of peace, no matter where we are or what's going on. A busy airport is a great place to practice. In the meditation instructions, I quoted Ajahn Amaro's very simple meditation instruction, which I just love. He invites us to rest in the peace and ease that is the natural peace and ease of body and mind. While I was away, I stayed with a relative who's about 10 years older than I am, and her son had given her an iPad, but she had no idea how to use it. So I spent some time showing her how it worked, and initially she kept getting confused because after scrolling through a few pages and switching apps, she didn't know how to get back to where she started. She just got lost. I showed her that her iPad had a home button that simply brought her back to the home page, no matter where she had wandered. Once she located that home button, she lost most of her fear of using her iPad. She said, "Oh, that's easy." It occurred to me that this is what we do in meditation practice. Mindfulness is the home button. If we can just remember to be mindful, we can come home anytime. In this context, it's interesting to note the Pali word for mindfulness, sati, shares the same root as our English word remembering. So mindfulness is remembering to pay attention wherever you are, remembering that you are aware. Sharon Salzberg reminds us that mindfulness is the ultimate mobile device. You can use it anywhere, anytime, unobtrusively. I love that quote. I often think about it, like, for instance, if I'm on a city bus, I think, oh, I'm going to use my mindfulness mobile device. Nobody's going to know that I'm doing it. Our ability to pay attention, our awareness is always accessible. It's right here. And when we cultivate this quality of attention, the present moment becomes our refuge. We only need to gently turn toward our experience with interest and acceptance. Whatever is going on in our experience is simply like this. So please take a moment, as I am, to check in with your body. What's going on right now? Let go of all these words for just a few seconds. And I'm going to sneak off and put in some eye drops. I'll be right back. That's better. The Tibetan teacher said, Mingyur Rinpoche said, the insight that the Buddha discovered is so simple and yet so difficult to accept. His teachings introduce us to a dormant, hidden, unrealized part of ourselves. This is the great paradox of the Buddhist path, that we practice in order to know what we already are, therefore attaining nothing, getting nothing, going nowhere. We seek to uncover what has already been here all along. We are already home. We just don't appreciate it more often than not because we get lost in wanting things to be other than they are. I've always thought that The Wizard of Oz is a great Dharma story. Dorothy dreams of a better world, but after a long journey seeking it out and experiencing many wonders and overcoming obstacles, she finds it all a bit overwhelming. But along comes Glinda the Good Witch, who points out that she has a home button. All she has to do is click her heels and repeat, there's no place like home. In the Four Quartets, T.S. Eliot said, we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Of course, if you know the Wizard of Oz story, you know that Dorothy's great journey was only a dream. But I think this makes it all the more a Dharma story. There's a Chinese proverb that holds, all life is a walking dream. All of death is a going home. On retreat, we often start the day by chanting the refuges, the 3 traditional Buddhist refuges. And indeed, some people do this at the beginning of every practice session at home. They are, in Pali and English, Buddham Saranam Gacchami. I go to the Buddha for refuge. Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. I go to the Dharma for refuge. Sangham Saranam Gacchami. I go to the Sangha for refuge. Reminding ourselves that we have these reliable refuges is like reminding ourselves to be mindful. They each have a double meaning, at least a double meaning, worth reflecting upon. Taking refuge in the Buddha means living and practicing according to the example of the historical Buddha. But it also means acknowledging our own Buddha nature and taking refuge in our innate ability to wake up. You're a Buddha too. Taking refuge in the Dharma refers to the collective teachings of the tradition. But Dharma can also be translated as reality, nature, or the way things are. So acknowledging the reality of dukkha in our lives, as well as the impermanence and the impersonal nature of our experience, is taking refuge in the Dharma. Seeing the interconnectedness of all beings and realizing the promise of freedom is taking refuge in the Dharma. If awareness is present, wisdom is present. I recently sat a retreat with South Bay teacher Gil Fronsdal, and he asked the rhetorical question, what is it that is to be known by the wise? And then he answered it, that which is a refuge, freedom, the Dhamma, which is the nature of things. That's what's to be known by the wise. Taking refuge in the Sangha can refer to our spiritual ancestors, all of the monastics, teachers, and lay practitioners going back to the historical Buddha. But it can also refer to this group of us right here on Zoom this evening. Most people, most yogis report that it's easier to meditate in a group than alone, and that insights often come more easily when we are sharing wisdom with each other. When I'm exploring the Dharma with other practitioners in conversation, I often smile at the thought that this conversation can only happen in this community. Anyone else would look at me cross-eyed when I say some of these things. And that's one of the beautiful refuges of the Sangha. We understand each other, well, most of the time. And when we gather together, even in a Zoom room, as we did tonight, I noticed as the faces start popping up on the screen, like devas magically appearing out of nowhere, that I always get the warm fuzzies, especially Mission Dharma. And even better when we're in person. You are my people, and this is a safe place. Ram Dass once said, "We're all just walking each other home." We're all just walking each other home. So the Buddha invites us to be islands unto yourselves, refuges unto yourselves, seeking no external refuge, with the Dharma or the truth as your island, with the Dharma as your refuge, seeking no other refuge. It's a reminder, once again, that we already have everything we need in this fathom-long body to find refuge and wake up. We don't need great learning or years of practice or proficiency in Pali. The secret teaching of the Buddha is that a peaceful heart and mind are our natural home. I've mentioned a number of different refuges that we can tap into, but I don't want to neglect perhaps the simplest and the easiest to access, which is the breath. The breath is, of course, just one function of having a body. But for millennia, yogis have found it to be a reliable refuge because the breath only happens in the present moment. I often start my formal meditation by focusing on the breath for a few minutes, just to ground me in the here and now. But amidst the distractions of everyday life, when I get overwhelmed by lists and projects, crowds and complications, I know that I only have to tune into my breath for a moment in order to ground myself in the present moment and find peace. It feels like a gift, maybe more like grace. The Latin word for breath is spiritus, which is the root for the word spiritual in English. In our tradition, spiritual is not some concept or set of beliefs. Spirit is the breath, something that is ever changing and yet cannot be held on to. But nevertheless, it's an utterly reliable refuge. So simple that we don't trust it until we can learn to make it our home. 2023 is a year of many anniversaries for me. For one thing, I turned 70 this year. And for another, I realized when I turned 70 that I've been living with AIDS for 35 years now, which is half my life. I've been practicing even longer. I went on my first retreat about 50 years ago. So my Dharma practice preceded the AIDS virus in my life. And the refuge of the Dhamma has often kept me grounded over the years through lots of loss and heartbreak. It has been a still point in a turning world. I honestly don't know if I'd be alive today if it weren't for my practice. So my gratitude knows no bounds. We have a contentious election year coming up, and it looks like it may be a bumpy ride, especially given today's news. When the news or life feels overwhelming, take a deep breath. It's helpful to remind ourselves that it's not the news that feels overwhelming, but rather our reactivity to it. Making peace with the world starts by finding peace within. Peace is available at any moment, and we only need to remember to turn toward it. And in that refuge, I always experience a moment of joy. And as the venerable teacher Analio reminds us, the whole of the Buddhist path can be seen as a progressive refinement of joy. Finally, the ultimate refuge is Nibbana, the unconditioned, the cessation of all attachment, aversion, and ignorance. This too is available to you. The Buddha promised I would not tell you about it if I did not know that it was possible. So I'm going to end with a quote from Jetsumna Tenzin Palmo, who's a remarkable English woman who went to study with Rinpoches in Tibet and became a senior teacher herself. Went off and lived for 3 years in a cave in a mountain, and I'm not sure if it was in Tibet. It might have been Bhutan, northern India. In any case, she wrote a book about it. 3 years on her own in a cave. Jetsumna Tenzin Palmo said, "The nature of the mind has no problems. It's the only place in samsara which has no problems. It's our real island of refuge. And this is why we are trying to experience the nature of mind, because this is the only place where there is security." Just to repeat, the nature of the mind is the only place where there is security. So that's my offering for this evening. Thank you for your kind attention. I was toying with the idea of breaking us into small groups, but I'm not sure we really have time, and I don't want to rush it. So, and I know some people just don't like small groups, breakout rooms. So instead, I'm just going to open it up to questions, and questions, reflections. And I'll tell you, the question that I would have proposed for small groups is, where do you find refuge? It might be a place, it might be a practice, it might be nature, it might be the breath, it might be meditation. So feel free to talk about that if you've been reflecting at all in this talk about where you find refuge. There's no right answer to that question. I'd be interested in hearing. Feel free to share. I think other people would probably like to hear as well. Or ask me anything you want. Anything about the talk, anything about my practice, whatever's up for you. And I can't see everybody all at once on my screen. So either put up an electronic hand or just unmute yourself and speak up. And we'll forgive you if two people speak up at the same time. Anybody at all?
Yeah. Um, speaking of refuge, I'm a birder, but I'm not a list maker, and I don't particularly like birding groups, but I've been birding for 30 years, 40 years. And I am completely at home, at peace, centered, whatever word you want to say, when I'm doing that. And I just have to be in the trees, by the water, looking at nature, whatever presents itself to me, that's how I experience it. Whatever comes up, I'm so grateful to have it, because it is so rich with wonder, and it's just there. There are, I mean, plants, insects, birds, little critters, people with dogs. I mean, whatever comes by is is just is just I'm in that zone, and it's lovely, and it's very, very restorative. Spend an hour there, and I do it several times a week, because it's just keeps my sanity in these crazy times we're living in. That, and also meditation. I can, when I do it regularly, which I'm trying to do more and more of. Yeah, that's very. I that is a refuge also. So
Oh,
that's
thank
my
you, Evelyn.
welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so I appreciate the fact that you brought in nature right away, because that's a major refuge for so many of us. And
Mhm.
I tend to find that nature automatically uh, it puts us into that peaceful place. It just kind of seems to override the busy mind, especially if you're some magnificent place like that we have access to around here, the beach or a redwood forest. Um, it's just awe-inspiring, and the mind just stops. We don't have to make a big effort. We don't have to try real hard
You
to
can even just go to a city park,
you could just go to a city park. You can go to your own backyard.
backyard. Exactly.
And when in doubt, look up and appreciate the fog or the clouds.
Right.
So I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. And Mary Gold has her hand up. Please, Mary, unmute yourself.
I did. Well, I think it's going to be a little repetitive. I've been meditating for a long time, like you, like 50 years. And that really is my refuge in life. It really is. But I think also, and I also do Tai Chi. That is also very, very wonderful thing. Um, and in the past, I've done yoga. Those are all good things. But also nature. I live by the beach here, and we have a lot of beautiful nature areas and parks and things like that. So that's definitely so. But there's also some other things. I'm doing artwork, that kind of thing. But I also realized, like, when I talk to my son and my grandchildren, especially my grandchildren, it's like instant joy. It's like somebody gave me a little transfusion of joy, and you kind of forget a little bit about the whole big world and the craziness going on. And you're just, children are very healing too, especially little ones. So that's all. But I want to say thank you. You have a wonderful talk, and I'm glad I just about made it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Mary. Thanks for bringing in the body. The body is always a wonderful refuge, and bodily activities, as you said, Tai Chi or yoga or just getting on the treadmill. Um, we talk about getting in the zone when we do some of these bodily activities, and that zone is very much like a meditative state.
I
So,
do find Tai Chi to be that one in particular be a very meditative day, especially I do it with a group in this beautiful park, and we all do it silently, and it really is very powerful. It's really wonderful, the whole experience, the nature, the physical meditation and action. It's quite wonderful. But my rock is meditating. That's my real refuge for everything. And it's got me through many things, as I'm sure everyone else has experienced.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you. Stephen has his hand up.
Thank you.
Please unmute yourself, Stephen.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yep, can hear you.
Okay. My question is, I tend to scan myself all the time for rejection. And I feel like it's, I think that I would like to be able to not fall into these holes about every 10 days with some rejection situation. It could be with teaching, could be with friends, could be any kind of situation. It could be my therapist trying to get rid of me, which he is. But I think that it would be nice to be able to, and I think part of it is feeling a great deal of insecurity in my life throughout my life. And any thoughts about letting go of rejection?
Well, yeah, thank you for having the courage to share that, Stephen. And I do have a thought about that, and that's that negative thoughts of any sort for other people in the room. We may have other types of negative thoughts other than rejection that you mentioned, but rejection or any other kind of negative thinking, I tend to label as a habit of mind. I know that I got conditioned. Maybe that was a result of the way I was raised, or something my teachers or my parents, or something I learned somewhere along the way. But everything we are is conditioning. And in Buddhism, in Pali, we call them sankharas. It's our programming. So somewhere along the way in life, you've gotten programmed to be sensitive to rejection. And I find in my meditation practice, my mindfulness practice, that to recognize those habits of mind that I have, the very familiar habits of mind. I know how he calls up the top 10. He says everybody's got a top 10 list of things where their mind kind of compulsively goes back to, right? We could all probably draw up our top 10 list. And rejection is one of yours. And I find it very helpful to, instead of thinking about rejection, particularly the content of it, to just remind myself, oh, that's a sankhara. That's a habit of mind. That's something that I've kind of trained, and I reinforce every time I come back to it. So the unlearning of that, the letting go of that, is a matter of first and foremost being mindful and knowing and noticing as you do, as you recognize that, oh, this is something that I do. And sometimes when I'm in my top 10 list of habitual thinking, and I recognize one popping up, I just say to myself, oh, there's that. There you go again. There's that thing for the 13th time today. And just gently reminding ourselves that that's what we're doing is sometimes enough to allow us to let go, to loosen up the grip of it a little bit. And then it's just a process of practice of doing that over and over again. So, but from a Buddhist mindfulness point of view, or Buddhist psychology, it's about not getting caught up in the content of what we're thinking, as noticing the nature of our thoughts. As you've done it, just notice, oh, here I am on the rejection thing again. I'm doing that thing that I do. You don't change it overnight. It takes a while, and there there are psychological methods in psychology that do this very systematically, that are very close to Buddhist meditation practice. But I'm sorry, your therapist is trying to dump you. That's a bummer.
Well, he thinks that it's time for me to fly on my own. He doesn't think that he thinks that there's a lot more people that need it a lot more than me.
You know, maybe you need a new therapist, but that's
I
me
don't
being
really know.
judgmental, which is
What?
one of my Sankaras.
I don't know. He'll stick around with me for a little while, so I'll take it as long as I can take him, as long as he'll have me. I'll just see him a lot less.
Well, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
I appreciate your courage.
Thank you. Very good answer.
Anyone else? Mary Gold, did you have another question? Your hand was still up.
Actually, I wanted to say something to the gentleman that just spoke, if I may. By the way, I thought your answer was great. But my instant feeling about that was from my own personal training, uh, was that I found, like, when I went to longer retreats, like weekend type retreats, that I would, after a few days feel really good and have this feeling, which I'm sure you've all or most have experienced, I think, where everything was fine, everything was complete, that I was enough, there was nothing lacking. You feel a sort of contentment that's you're just living in the moment. It's kind of hard to describe, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But it's a feeling where you don't feel any inadequacy. You feel like everything you need is there and you're enough. And it's a wonderful feeling. And I think once you've experienced that a few times, it's like it's there, it exists, you can experience that, you have experienced that. And I think that changes things of, like, feeling rejected or more responsive to those kind of things outside yourself. So I just wanted to share that, but that was a very that's been very good for me to have gone to longer retreats, the weekend or week or whatever, and had that experience. And I think it's like meditating. Once you meditate, it's there. You know what that's like. It's not something you can verbalize so well, but you know what it is. So I just wanted to share that. Maybe that would be a little bit helpful also.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Thank you for that. And
Thank you.
yes, I once heard a teacher say on a retreat, somebody asked a question and the teacher replied, well, the answer to every Buddhist question is get back on the cushion. So there's some wisdom in that. It's a paraphrase of what you just shared, I think. Marjorie, please. My friend Marjorie.
Thank you, David. I was very engaged with what you had to say throughout the evening. What I wanted to pick up on is something that you touched on, and that is the political situation being so difficult. I am totally caught up in it. I find it's like a car wreck to me. I can't look away, even though I know looking at it is not does not bring me peace. Sometimes I do something that is very helpful. Like Sunday, I went to the Botanical Gardens, which is my favorite place in San Francisco. And I sat on a bench and meditated and watched the birds and looked at the plants. And I just had a beautiful, beautiful experience. But most days I don't push myself to do that. I get caught up in this endless saga of our country and what's happening. And I don't know why, if I know there's an alternative and there's something I can do to rescue myself, I still stay glued to the mess. And I am very curious to hear your words about that.
Well, thank you, Marjorie. I have the same tendencies you do. I tend to be a news hound. But you don't have to be, and you actually just beautifully described the solution. Turn off the news and go do something else. Um, the news will still be happening, and it'll still be there later in the day. One thing that I found very helpful is to not start the day with the news, because that just puts me in a mood to start with. I start the day with a silent meditation, and it tends to make for better days for me. But I had another thought about this. I have a neighbor that I run into on the sidewalk, and she's even more of a news hound and a worrier and a fretter than you and I are. I ask her how she's doing, and she always says, "Well, I'm doing okay, but," and then she'll talk about what's really pissing her off about what's going on in the world. And I had an insight into that one day, which was that she's just adding to her own suffering and adding to the suffering of the world. And that's what I do too, is when I carry around dissatisfaction with whatever I saw in the news that morning, when I carry that around with me, all I'm doing is adding to the dissatisfaction, to the dukkha of the world. And that is kind of a sobering thought for me. I thought that's not what I want to be as a human being. I don't want to be carrying around this discontent, this anger, this frustration, this worry, this fear, because that's just adding to the dukkha of the world. So it doesn't mean that we don't care what's going on in the news. It doesn't mean that we don't have opinions, but we don't have to carry around a reaction all the time. And that's the Four Noble Truths. That's the first three Noble Truths: is there is dukkha in the world. There is there is unreliability and trouble in our lives and in the world. But the second Noble Truth, which is the cause of our suffering, is our reactivity. It's not the dukkha itself; it's our reactivity. So you can have a terrible disease like AIDS, like I do, and not be particularly bothered by it. You deal with it, you cope as best you can, you take your meds, you go to the doctor, and then you let it go. You don't let it rule your life. And the same thing's true for politics or the news or family troubles or whatever it is we're not so much training ourselves to change the world, which is a skillful thing to do. But in Dharma practice, we're changing ourselves to be less reactive to the dukkha of the world. And there's a difference. So I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Very helpful.
And we have time for one more question from Mark, if it's a short one.
I'm
Please.
just going to make a comment. This may seem like an odd thing to say, but I have a very odd sense of humor. It's about the radio and the news and all that stuff. Whenever I hear the radio and the news, I feel angry and disgusted. So I know that anytime I want to feel that way, all I have to do is turn on the radio and the news.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. Do I want to feel angry and disgusted right now? That might make you think twice about turning on the news, right?
Anytime I want to feel angry and disgusted, all I have to do is turn on the news.
Yeah. Well, with that wisdom, Mark, thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end, and I just want to take a moment to offer the merit of our practice. And here's something that I do that's a little bit different. You might not be used to, but pick out a face on the screen. If you're comfortable, if you don't have your camera on, if you're comfortable turning on your camera, do just for a couple of minutes, but you don't have to. Pick out a face on the screen. They won't know you're looking at them, and you don't know who's looking at you. And wish that person well. May you be filled with loving kindness. And then pick out a different face. May you be safe from danger and harm. And pick out a third face. May you be healthy in body and mind. And then taking in the whole group, the whole song of this evening. May you live with peace and ease. May you find refuge. And expanding your